So this is White versus the Sicilian, game one, lesson one. We're dealing now with the classical variation. So we have e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and knight f6. Black develops a second knight and attacks the e-pawn. Note that to exchange with knight takes d4 would be a poor decision for black, even though it disposes of white's strong knight. After queen takes d4, the white's queen sits in majesty in the center, and there are no black pieces that can dislodge her. Black does better to maintain the tension between the knights on d4 and c6. White's fifth move, knight c3. It looks as though white can disrupt the black build-up with a different move of knight takes c6, followed by b takes c6, and then e5. But alas, queen a5 check wins the reckless pawn. Note that a move like 5 knight takes c6 should only be made if white has a definite idea in mind, as generally speaking it just strengthens the black cluster of center pawns by transferring the b7 pawn to c6. Warning, always be on guard against double attacks by the black queen, especially in a move like queen a5, coming with check. It's one of the easiest ways to lose material. Black's fifth move, d6. The defining move of the classic variation. Black's alternatives to be analyzed later include 5 e6 or e5. Now, on the other hand, d5 would be wholly wrong. Certainly it would be nice for black if he could get away with this move, as the liquidation of the e4 pawn would deprive white of his space advantage. So, why exactly is 5 d5 bad here? After all, black has two knights in play, so we can't just say it is because he's opening the center when he's far behind in development. If you have read through the introduction to the chapter, you'll be aware that the exchange of the exchange of 3 c takes d4 and 4 knight takes d4 has loosened white's hold on the dark squares in the center, but he remains as strong as ever on the light squares. Therefore, it is inappropriate for black to challenge white on the light squares, and sure enough, he's punished by bishop b5, when in order to stop knight takes c6, the collapse of one central light square, black has little choice but to play bishop d7, after which e takes d5 follows the collapse of a second central light square, and he would be left a pawn down in a horrible mess. Note that we are by no means rejecting the possibility of black playing his pawn to d5 at some later stage in the game. It is a valuable strategic idea. We are simply pointing out that black's position wasn't ready for 5 d5. The advance requires a lot of preparation to engineer safely, and also some compliance from the opponent. Therefore, black is correct to prefer the modest 5 d6, which keeps the center stable and fits in well with the general scheme of fortifying the dark squares. There we are. White's sixth move of bishop g5. Simple and strong. White develops his bishop and forces black to reckon with bishop takes f6, and then after black's move of g takes f6, his king won't have a safe refuge on the king side. He also deters a fianchetto with black's bishop to g7, as if black's sixth move of g6, and then white's seventh move of bishop takes f6 and e takes f6 is horrible for black. d6 is left weak and black is deprived of the pawn that is needed to control d5. Now look at this next move. e6. Black rules out that the bishop takes f6 move. Rules out the bishop takes f6 move, as he can now recapture with the queen. He also guards the d5 square and clears the way for the development of his bishop on f8. In view of the importance of White's dark square bishop in the Sicilian, some players have refused to accept that bishop takes f6 is actually a threat, and perhaps they are right. In a recent game, after the move of Black's sixth move of bishop d7, White simply got out of his plan of advancing the kingside pawn with White's seventh move, queen d2, rook c8, knight takes c6, a clever moment to exchange, as having gone to the trouble of putting his rook on c8, Black won't want to block his c-file with b takes c6. It follows bishop takes c6, f3, a6, queenside castle, e6, knight e2, bishop e7. And White's 12th move of h4. And White was rolling in this 2004 Russian Championship. So now let's move back to here. We have Black's sixth move of e6. And we have here queen d2. White's plan gradually unfolds. He clears the way for queenside castling and isn't bothered by any apparent loss of tempo after knight takes d4, queen takes d4, as he would be happy to have his queen so finely placed. Let's see how things might work out in practice in the games of Spriget, Kedar, and Timon.